And that's the other thing with this commitment. It's born out of some sense of love. It's a very big human word, but some sort of love and genuine sense of service for the audience, that they deserve better, some love for the subject, some passion, some fascination. That's what you'd look for in a restaurant, and I think that's increasingly what people look for in brands, is that sense of authenticity that comes with that human emotion of love. So, now I have a diagram. It's a very different diagram. All of my 5 books previously had a grid, but I couldn't make a grid with this book. I tried, and it drove me mad, because everything related to everything else. So I ended up with this wonderful network of different strategies that are sort of connected to each other in all sorts of ways, and it spells NW, which is made with. And these are the 8 recipes I will show you. That's the rest of my talk. And they will seem similar in some cases. You think, well, they have paella, we have paella, they have pilaf, and it's sort of, similar, and in some cases they're very different. They don't have ham on. And each one, I've just tried to say in a sentence, what is the strategy? So the strategy here is to ignore Adam Smith and Karl Marx and all that time where we created factory styles of production, and go back to the artisanal craft of making things beautifully, the traditional way that things are made, but find a modern system to put that in, so that it's relevant, so that it works today, so that it's contemporary. It's not from the market where you buy the old souvenirs, it's for now. And that network, now that we have these networks, we don't need to alienate production, and we don't need to produce like a factory, and we can involve people in how things are made. A very literal example is Karen Kacheksian in Beirut, who was working for some very famous brands in Italy, and working with, the top industrial design, and she would say, any idea I have in my mind, I sketch it, and they can make it, like a lessee. You can just make it with these plastic materials, an incredible computerized production. Then she moved back to Beirut to be with her family, to be with her home, to be close to the belly button, and she couldn't do this because the only production facilities she had were local craftsmen. And so she gradually taught them to make very, very modern, she makes very modern, very high-end furniture and objects. And so she showed me a tray that she makes, and it's a very beautiful, simple tray. It looks industrial, but it somehow looks warm and human. And she said the guy who makes these, he used to make the trays for the market, and they have a verse from the Quran and pictures and all this stuff. Took all of that off and left one little wazo, one little bird. And she makes everything like that, and she makes everything with a profound sense of story. She has a whole range called Archetypes, where it's about how does this feel in this hand? What does this object mean? How do we understand by touching things? It's very conceptual. Everything she makes feels retro, but then you look at it closer and you realise, no, it's something new, I haven't seen this, but she has all these signatures. And it feels warm and human because it's not industrially perfect. She was showing me the line on a table. And so she makes actually very aggressive, very industrial styles with the hand. And it's kind of beautiful what she does, and it is just very good design, but interesting. And she said it's because my curse became my blessing. She moved there, she couldn't make things like they made in Italy, so gradually she had to develop something new. PS Lab have done the same thing in the same town, but they're very internationally big and famous. They are the couture of lighting, and many restaurants and galleries and hotels in the world use them, and they do everything they do to make their styles modern and also site-specific. It must be for that place. If they made the lighting for here, it would only be for here. Except, again, they have this artisanal style of production for the same reason as Karen, and they had to really work with their materials, but again, they end up with something unique, something very organic, even though it's, again, very, very modern. These are design examples. This guy I met, Timur, he's like the Steven Spielberg of Turkey. He made this series called Magnificent Century. He was a commercials director. There was a big financial crisis in 2001. He lost all of his money. He sat at home by the phone for 6 months. No one would hire him because he was a competitor. And then he got a job in Turkish TV And he said, you have to understand Turkish TV, the idea of a TV program is we have a famous singer who appears in the show, and we have Indian production values. And that's what he couldn't believe it, because he was making commercials not just for Turkey, but for Japan and for America too, a very different style, and he also made cinema. And so he worked and worked up, he's broken all the rating records in Turkey, and then he got enough funding to make what he really wanted, and what he wanted was to make a program about the Ottoman Empire that was as magnificent as that time was, and he is based on a beautiful love story between Suleiman the Magnificent and his wife Roxolana. This has been a hit show in 43 countries. This caused debates in Saudi Arabia about why Saudi Arabian men aren't romantic. This really changed lives and marriages, and it was all his vision that you could make Turkish television like he'd made cinema and commercials, and he brought in all of those craftsmen and the technique, a very different type of craft, but he was the first to use Steadicam, he was the first to use that really cutting edge style of cinema and commercials, grading, and he made something that nobody had seen in Turkish TV, and nobody could believe. I had talked to some of the ad guys in Turkey, and they said it was like a black swan, it just came from nowhere, and it started a craze called Ottomania. They have this craze for the Ottoman Empire now, and the Prime Minister everywhere. But there was nothing historical at the time. It was purely his instinct that you could make something magnificent, and his sense of the craft of production. And he was very canny commercially as well. I had longer to tell you the story. And here is somebody who made a business that just got... Turkey is one of the hottest internet investment markets in the world. It's where all the American and Swiss and other investors are going, because it's growing so fast, and this is one of the stars. Last round of funding, they got $44 million, and what they do is something very necessary, which is they take all of the pain out of dealing with that kebab restaurant up the road, because their food is delicious. You don't want Domino's pizza and other stuff, but the guys are late, they're sloppy, they forget your order, so they created an ordering system for independent craftsmen, all the little guys. Now 1 in 7 restaurants in Turkey uses this system. They just got 44 million in investment. They've expanded into Russia and the Middle East, and rated as one of the top places in the world. And it's brilliant just how they worked out how to do this, how to take what you want as a food experience, but just modernise it so that it works, and they did all of that brilliantly. So that's craft with. Invent with is almost the opposite, which is how do we humanise really ultra-new inventions. And I met many things which are very high-tech, but they have this real human sense of story embedded in them. And I thought that was interesting, actually, that I think that probably is the success story of Apple, is not the technology, it's humanising the technology, making it pretty in their case. So bringing humanity, story, play, and involvement to new technology. This is the winner of a talent show across the Middle East called